Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Jim Wickman and I'm the Director of Catholic Life in Campus Ministry here at Georgetown University. It's my pleasure today to welcome you to Dahlgren Chapel of the Sacred Heart. I'm going to take you on a tour of some of the features of the chapel today so that you can see the beauty of this space that has become the spiritual home for so many students, faculty, staff, and alumni over the years. Dedicated in 1893, the chapel was a gift of Mr. and Mrs. John and Elizabeth Dahlgren. Both coming from prominent families in the country at that time, Elizabeth Dahlgren was actually a cousin of St. Catherine Drexel from the Drexel family. They gave this chapel to the university as a gift in memory of their son, who sadly died at 16 months in 1891. So I'm very happy to be with you today to take you on this tour, and we'll take a look at a few of the features and the beautiful spots within the chapel. We're now standing in front of the altar in Dahlgren Chapel. And of course, the first thing that you notice when you walk in the door is the beautiful stained glass window of the Sacred Heart behind the altar. When Mrs. Dahlgren was working with Father Richards at the founding of the chapel, she insisted the name be the Chapel of the Sacred Heart. And as a matter of fact, the program that was put together for the dedication in 1893 says Dedication of the Chapel of the Sacred Heart, and then in parentheses, Dahlgren Memorial Chapel. Over the years, the beloved chapel has become known as Dahlgren Chapel, but the official name is still Dahlgren Chapel of the Sacred Heart. The window itself was fabricated by the Mayer Company from Munich, and Mrs. Dahlgren worked directly with the artists of the company on things like which figures are in the different stained glass windows, what are the colors that they're wearing. She paid attention to every detail. In the center, we have the image of Christ of the Sacred Heart. On either side of the image of the Sacred Heart of Christ, we have the Blessed Mother on one side and St. Joseph on the other. And then on the far ends, St. Elizabeth of Hungary, who was the patron saint of Elizabeth Dahlgren, and St. John the Evangelist, who was the patron saint of John Dahlgren. Framing the window is the organ that was just built 6 years ago when we did the renovation of 2014-2015. Donated by the Lanowski family, this organ has about 1,000 pipes, and it was designed specifically to frame the window with the way that gold pipes shine and reflect the light. Sometimes the light is so intense at sunset that it reflects the light onto the floor, and you see the different colors in different places around the chapel. It's really quite beautiful. At the center of the chapel is the altar table itself. During the renovation of 2014 and 15, while many things changed and were updated in the chapel, from the floors to the chairs to the lighting and the sound, the altar table itself was not changed. This is the table from the 1972 renovation, and it was kept during that renovation. In the floor behind the altar where the priest stands, you'll find a piece of the mosaic tile that was original to the high altar that was put in 1893 when the chapel was built. And you'll also find the reliquary. Now, many Catholics are familiar with the practice, the tradition of putting relics and embedding them, relics of saints, embedding them into the altar table. We follow the ancient tradition of embedding the reliquary in a box underneath the altar table. And in that reliquary, you would find relics from St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, the first American saint, and St. Francis Xavier, one of the companions of St. Ignatius. We're now at the Tabernacle here in Dahlgren Chapel. This tabernacle is very interesting because there are several elements that are original to the high altar from 1893. On the sides, there are two Carrara marble carved figures of angels that were embedded in that altar. On the floor, you have another piece of mosaic tile that was original to that high altar. And the door and the door frame were part of the high altar. The symbol above the door is a pelican with its young. Now, oftentimes students will ask, why is there a symbol of a pelican at the Tabernacle? The first time that I saw a pelican as a Christian symbol was many years ago when taking a tour of the ruins beneath St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. And the pelican in those catacombs was embedded into a mosaic tile on the floor, the symbol of the pelican, and I became very curious as to why. Early Christians adopted the pelican as a symbol because they believed that the pelican would feed its young by using its own blood. Christ gave his body and blood for us that we might have life, that we might eat and drink and live and have new life because he gave his life for us. We're now at our final stop on the tour of Dahlgren Chapel at what is known as the Dahlgren Cross. This cross has an important role in the history of Catholicism in North America. It is believed to have been carried over on the ships, the Ark and the Dove, that landed in the English colonies at St. Clement Island in what is now southern Maryland in 1634, and the first Catholic Mass was held there by Father White. The cross was put on top of the structure that became the first school that the Jesuits built in North America. So you see it has that important role to play. It was put here in Dahlgren Chapel in the renovation of the early 1970s and has only been removed twice since then. One was for a papal mass with Pope Francis a few years ago, as requested by the Archdiocese of Washington, and the second was at the request of the Smithsonian Institution, because it was used in a special display on the history of religion in America at the National Museum of American History. Surrounding it and framing this cross are the names and the dedication of the renovation of 2014. Thank you for joining us for this short tour of Dahlgren Chapel. I hope you enjoyed learning some of this history. Dahlgren Chapel is a sacred space that is steeped in history and yet is still vibrantly alive through our students. We hope that you can join us sometime here in the chapel for one of our services. If you'd like to learn more about Catholic ministry at Georgetown University, please go visit our webpage, which is found at catholicministry.georgetown.edu, or on our Facebook page, Georgetown University Catholic Ministry, or Instagram, which is Catholic Hoyas. Thank you again.